Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. We are already overshot our time for commencement of activity this morning, and I know that because of the activities that went very late yesterday, some people are not here, but we have to go ahead, we can wait. Also the fact that there's another session holding in another hall, so I know why the situation is like this, but we have programs. Our chairman for this morning is distinguished Senator Patrick Ayo Akinyelure. Senator Akinyelure is the chairman of the Senate Committee overseeing the Ombudsman in Nigeria. They also oversight the Code of Conduct Bureau, Code of Conduct Tribunal. So he's chairing this morning's session. I have the pleasure now to request distinguished Senator Ayo Akinyelure to please come forward and commence the program.
I want to welcome all the representatives of countries, the Ombudsman in Africa, and I want to thank all of you for organizing this event. What I would advise is jot down your questions. In the course of our presentation, another assignment was added to my portfolio. And I want to plead that everybody should sit down. We have 2 more papers to present. In fact, when I was engaged, I said I have a meeting in the National Assembly by 1 o'clock. They appealed to me that come. The session 2 that was to be shared by Lieutenant General Tuko Yusuf Barati, Chief of Staff, Nigerian Army. He was unavoidably absent. Therefore, I was again pleaded to share the session 2 by, moderating, or as the case may be, that I should allow 2 other paper presenters to present. I would advise that all of us should sit down. The first 4 paper presenters, whatever you have any questions to ask, jot it down. They are still here. And immediately after these 2 paper presenters must have presented theirs, we allow maybe 10 minutes for question and answers. They are here. So when you want to engage Honorable Mrs. on Jamaica system, from what he has presented, you will be able to throw more light on it so that you can have that one on your left hand and carry it back to your country to enhance the performance of Ombudsman in your relevant countries accordingly. So on that note, I want to call, we have Lieutenant General Titi Matazima to deliver a paper on the importance of the military ombudsman in Africa. See, this one now is the 3rd level of ombudsman as categorized by one of our paper presenters, where you have industry ombudsman. By having ombudsman attached to a particular sector of the economy to solve their problems without actually going to court for adjudication. Because, you see, military ombudsman, they are the one to protect the integrity and safety of the nation. And therefore, when there are issues, it is better for them to resolve it internally than going to court. So, Lieutenant General Titi Matasima, a former South African Army officer, Lieutenant General Temba Matasima, CCM, SM, MMM, was appointed military ombudsman in 2012. Prior to his appointment as military ombudsman, Matasima transferred to the South African National Defense Force on integration in 1994. After a period on the Joint Army Coordinating Committee that oversaw the integration process, he then became General Officer Commanding Eastern Province Command in 1996. In 1998, he became the Chief of Army Personnel. 1999, he was appointed Chief of Personnel and promoted to the rank of Lieutenant General. In 2000, the SANDAF restructured and he was appointed into a newly created post of Chief of Joint Support. In 2004, he was appointed Chief of Corporate Staff until 2005, when he became Chief Human Resources. Lieutenant Matasima to deliver his paper on the importance of the military ombudsman in Africa. You are welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Senator, for the opportunity. Distinguished colleagues, heads of ombud institutions, honorable members of the audience, ladies and gentlemen, I greet you all. Allow me to take this opportunity to congratulate the Honorable Chief Public Complaints Commissioner, also Chief Host of the IOE event. The Secretariat, Professor Victor Ayeni, the African Ombudsman and Mediators Association, AYOMA, President, also Public Protector of my own country, Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane, IOE and IOG team on all your endeavors that has resulted in the hosting of this first ever historic event in Abuja, Nigeria. On behalf of the Office of the Military Ombud and the Acting Military Ombud, Advocate Simpiwe Damane Kosana, it is an honor for me to address you on this International Ombud Expo convened under the theme Extending the Ombud Frontiers, Better Governance, Enhanced Performance. You will note that in South Africa we call it Ombud as opposed to Ombudsman. We know the history about the Ombudsman, starting many years in Sweden and other countries. But for some reasons, our politicians in Parliament decided it will be Ombud, because sometimes if it is Ombudsman, to some people, it presupposes that only a man will be appointed. So they discussed among themselves and agreed on Ombud. I'm here today with some members from the Office of the Military Ombud. I have Advocate Dinkit Dube, Sindile Mazibuko, I have Colonel Mashalaba, and Magidela. Colonel Mashalaba stays in Abuja representing the Chief of the Defense Force. The South African Military Ombud is indeed honored to be invited to share perspectives and experience on the topic, the importance of the military ombudsman in Africa, recognizing that political, social, and economic development is impossible without sustainable peace and security. The military, according to my Minister of Defense, as the guardian of the state, also needs to be guarded. It becomes who guards the guards. Hence the establishment of the institution of the Oversight of the Military Ombud. The office continues to reflect on the journey traveled and milestones achieved since 2012, when the Military Ombudsman Act was promulgated and signed by the President. And immediately thereafter, the first military ombudsman was appointed. Sadly or fortunately, the presenter was that person who was appointed at the first institution in the continent. 7 years later, the Office of the Military Ombudsman has made great strides and continues to explore the unlimited possibilities to enhance operational efficiencies and service delivery, and sharing the continent best practice, taking into consideration each country context and legislative framework. What then is the role of the military ombuds in Africa? In my quest to answer this question, it is worth mentioning that South Africa's first parliament promulgated the White Paper on Defense in 1996, 2 years after the birth of our democracy and groundbreaking defense policy. This is when our politicians started to discuss the possibility of having this specific office. For some time, there was a lull. They came back in 1998. After that, there was a lull. They came back in 2011, they discussed, they agreed this time because there were some difficulties that we needed such an office. It is against that background that this paper aims to share knowledge and best practice on military ombudsing with special focus on civil-military relations, promote good governance and accountability, and explore mechanisms to institute ombud institutions from each country context, to improve the functioning and governance of armed forces. Now, Africa's call for ownership. Africa, like many other continents, is faced with challenges of political uncertainty and security reforms that weakens institutional structures, effective good governance mechanisms, and human rights, which are critical elements to ensure effective and sustainable democracy, rule of law, and institutional capacity development. It is envisaged that discussions on the role of military ombudsmen in Africa will advance this discourse of Africa's collective ownership in finding lasting solutions to Africa's problems, especially in the security sector reform processes, aligned with the realities and needs of peoples, states, and communities. The following were identified as essential to the role of military ombudsmen in the continent: collective efforts to finding lasting solutions, enhance institutional ownership, and support by both civil society and military community. Promote dialogue among the different sectors of society on civil-military oversight issues as a nation-building measure. Promote peace, security, and stability in Africa. Promote and defend a culture of good governance, democratic principles, human rights, transparency, and accountability, as well as social justice in the security sector. This has to go hand in hand with deductions of bureaucracy and maladministration, and promote the establishment of high standards of ethical conduct, integrity, and accountability in public institutions. Let me start with briefly outlining the mandate of the South African Military Ombudsman. As indicated, the office was established in the year 2012. The appointment of the military ombudsman and his deputy was conducted by the President of the Republic as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. The purpose of the office was to investigate complaints lodged in writing regarding conditions of service for serving members, former members, members of the communities around, especially those who had issues against the military. Sometimes when the military is deployed to support the police, like operations like cordoning and search, operations like roadblocks, if there are some members of the uniformed services who insult, who kick, or who are so rude and offensive to members of the civilian communities, those members are free to come and approach our office. And they can complain in terms of this law. They are fully empowered to do that. If there is any member who feels that so-and-so Trooper Matanzima is not being promoted for some reasons, and his career is standing still, that member is free in terms of this act to come and present on behalf of that person. The office is fully empowered to deal with any issue relating to those complaints. In terms of its mission, it provides an independent, impartial, expeditious complaints resolution process for, as indicated, serving and former members of the Defense Force. You may be asking, what type of complaints are these? I can give you some few examples. The most common complaints relating to conditions of service relate to allowances, salaries, service benefits, promotions and termination of service. Conditions of service relates also to conditions as defined in our Defense Act of 2002. Upon finalization of an investigation, the military ombudsman in our country submits the final recommendations to the Minister of Defense and military veterans for implementation. If she agrees, then these findings and recommendations will be implemented by the Chief of the Defense Force. We have not met any resistance. This brings me to the question, why is civilian oversight over the military important? Those who were in the military, you remember, Mao Zedong said, the gun cannot command the party commands the gun. As you are aware, the dictates of a civilian control of the military is a liberal democracy doctrine that places ultimate responsibility for a country's strategic decision-making in the hands of the civilian political leadership, rather than professional military staff officers. The duty of the officers, the military staff, is to execute operations. In fact, viewed broadly, civilian-military relations is a critical variable for military effectiveness, making the security sector accountable to the larger purpose of a nation and citizenry rather than absolute autonomy of the military. In addition, the international perspective, the African Union policy framework on security sector reform highlights the need for state actors to provide political support, to strengthen institutional structures, and to mobilize the necessary resources to facilitate security sector reform processes on the continent at all levels. In this sense, civil-military oversight contributes to the effective and accountable governance of the armed forces. In furtherance of civilian-military oversight, integration process, relevant political and public bodies should support the enactment of national legislatures in support of oversight of the security sector. National legislation must promote fundamental human rights of all its citizens, to prohibit the limitation of the rights and freedoms of citizens by the security sector through the use of intrusive operational methods. We all remember that soldiers are human beings, as citizens, they also have rights. Soldiers are only used as a cutting edge during hostilities to protect and defend the country. Those found in violation or abuse of these laws should be held accountable. In strengthening institutional and administrative capacity in all fields, and in upholding the Constitutive Act of the African Union, which, among other things, underscores the need for peace, security, stability, and human rights based on people's participation, inclusion, and ownership of the democratic processes. Member states are encouraged to set up appropriate independent oversight instruments, such as dedicated military ombud institutions, through political will and national legislation. The legislation needs to empower these civil institutions to investigate complaints from the public regarding the official conduct of members of the Defense Force and the military, and to monitor compliance of international humanitarian and human rights law. The role of military ombud in Africa is a pertinent discourse in the 21st century and should be at the core of peace and security reform in the continent. The concept of military ombuds is a global phenomenon and functions not only as watchdogs over armed forces, but also acts as buffers of enhanced civil-military relations through robust advocacy and impartiality. Because of the time, I'm reminded that I have a few minutes left. I'm not used to this. I prepared for this conference. But nevertheless, the paper will be available for those who will be interested in reading. Last year, we had a conference in South Africa in October where many countries attended, including many countries from West Africa and also from Europe. The Office of the Military Ombud hosted that 10th International Conference of Ombuds Institutions. There were certain decisions that were taken, and the theme was the evolving roles and responsibilities of the armed forces, and certain recommendations were given by members. The conference concluded with an Africa Day symposium themed Advancing the Narrative of Oversight over the Armed Forces of Africa, aimed at exploring the dialogue and enhancing discourse of security sector reform in the continent and its implications on the armed forces. The 10th ECOWAF Africa Day Symposium and subsequent recommendations reconfirmed the need for the establishment of military oversight bodies to promote good governance, civil-military relations, and human rights and the armed forces. Incidentally, in the case of South Africa, although politicians were discussing in Parliament, the Office of the Public Protector actually made strong recommendations to the Minister of Defense to establish its own capacity in terms of the military ombud. There are no clashes between the Chief of the Defense Force Office and the military ombud. Instead, there is an MOU between the two offices to make sure that they can work together. Now, in conclusion, in pursuit of providing proper redress mechanisms, enhance civil-military relations, and ensuring that an accountable and transparent administration is put in place, it is my considered view that as a confidence-building measure, the IOE participants need to robustly engage on the role of military ombudsmen in Africa. The solution to Africa's problems lies in each one of us as a collective and as well as national political will. This will be a tangible legacy, contributing towards a peaceful coexistence through the promotion of democracy, good governance, the prevention and resolution of conflict, socio-economic development, and integration. I thought I would end up with quotations. On this note, let me quote Chinua Achebe, a Nigerian poet, critic, professor, and novelist. And I quote, "When we are comfortable, inattentive, we run the risk of committing grave injustices, absent-mindedly," close quotes. Yena Usoyinga, in addition, a distinguished Nigerian poet, author, and a political activist, once said, and I quote, "The greatest threat to freedom is the absence of criticism," close quotes. Thank you very much.
Let's give Lieutenant General a round of applause. I know we all enjoyed his paper presentation, and that we have learned a lot from South African experience. I don't think, let me just look at it. I think we need to take the last paper presenter quick so that we can save time. Then finally, I will make my own comments. Then we'll take questions from all the 6 papers. So the next paper presenter is Dr. Ndubusi Nwokolo, the Senior Research and Policy Head, Nexia, Nigeria. He is to present a paper on grievance handling in the armed forces, issues and options. Dr. Nwokolo is an international development specialist who is Senior Policy and Research Lead at Nexia SPDC, Security, Peace and Development. He has considerable experience as a researcher, practitioner, lecturer, and trainer on conflict, peace building, development, and security, and a detailed understanding of approaches to post-conflict reconstruction and local governance. He has worked with international and regional organizations, government, charities, and universities, and the private sector in countries in Europe and sub-Saharan Africa. His work addresses development challenges in areas of conflict and governance, security sector reform, and integration process and building state capacity after conflict. It is on this ground my singular honor and privilege once again to invite Dr. Ndubuisi Nwokolo to come and present his paper on grievance handling in the armed forces, issues and options. Dr. Nwokolo, you are welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I will do the Nigerian thing. I will stand on the existing protocol so that I don't keep reciting everything. It's always good to be the last speaker because others may have done the job for you. So they've done the job for me, so I'm not going to pick from what they are saying and try to say a few things. For me, this is like homecoming. My first job was with Public Complaints Commission, so I could see my former colleagues, my managers, and members of Public Complaints Commission, which I left about 15 years ago to move abroad to study. And Professor Yeni became my mentor in the UK. Incidentally, Dr. Roger Korantai was, both of us graduated from International Development Department of University of Birmingham. He was leaving while I was joining the department. So it's like there's a synergy here. I know a lot of people. So I was here when he talked about governance. But the good thing is that when you talk about governance and you talk about integrity, it's easier for you to know that they're all the same process. Anti-corruption, governance, democratic building. They're the things you need to understand. So, like what the Lieutenant General did, I was asked to talk about handling grievance. I found out that he did my job. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to flip it the other side to tell you why do we need a military ombudsman now. So I'm going to be shouting like those guys are Hawk Wales in Alaba. So I'm going to convince you. I thought, I wish the Chief of Army Staff is here. So probably I'll be talking to power to tell him why we think we should. But I'm happy we have a senator here. So probably he will, when he goes back, he's going to say, this is my next bill. We need one immediately. Why do we need a military ombudsman? First, we have a country that is fighting war. Fighting war, we have our soldiers deployed in almost the 36 states. So it means as our military keep engaging in these activities, things are bound to be happening. One, is either their rights are being infringed upon by people that work with them, or that they are infringing on the rights of the people they have been saved to protect. So because of their engagement, these things are bound to be happening. You heard the general talk about why South Africa established its own. Incidentally, it's only South Africa that has a military ombudsman in the whole of Sub-Saharan Africa, even Africa as a whole. So, and that's why a lot of people try to mirror theirs after Canada and Germany. So why does Nigeria, why would Nigeria need one? Nigeria is a fragile state. We don't need to hide our face to say that. We are a fragile state. A fragile state that found out that most of its democratic principles are not developing the way it should. 20 years of return to democracy. Are we shouting hallelujah? No. So it means that as we build these institutions that will help us to achieve that Eldorado, that is the best way to go. Now you find out that military ombudsman are independent institutions that will help to check the excesses of military men and women, either because of the way they carry out their roles. You find out that because of the structure of the military, there's this command structure: obey before complain. If you're asked to jump, you jump before asking what is the height. So that's the way the military is. So the issue now is, how do we build an institution that helps these men and women to have their rights not protected? It's only in the third world that we don't give this kudos to our military. While I was studying in the UK, I remember that each time a UK military officer is killed in Iraq, people lined up the street and are crying, throwing flowers. Nobody does that here. You know, because of the way they see the military. If you're a veteran in America, people respect you because they see, oh, you are fighting to protect us. So how do we ensure that these men and women who are fighting to protect us, that their own right is not infringed upon by an institution that will be established? You see why we need one. Now, you find out that because of the way the military is structured, they don't even know how to complain. I'm sure some of us who were here about 7 months ago knew about the mutiny in Boronu, where some soldiers said, we've not been paid, we're not going to fight. If they had an institution which is like Ombudsman, what do you think they would have done? They would have lodged their grievance through such channel. Yeah, I'm going to say the way it is. Sorry, I'm a consultant. I'm trying to say things the way they are. I'm not going to hide my face. The condition of service is not something that is palatable. We all know that. We all know about the issues of corruption they said is going on massively. The defense vote, the security vote, nobody accounts for it. The defense vote, nobody knows how much it is. Could the military ombudsman help us to solve all this situation? It might be the way to go. Now you find out that because these men and women, we take them to go and fight for us. We give them substandard products. They're attacked by Boko Haram, attacked by ISWAP. All we know is that people are being brought back as body bags. If we have a military ombudsman, couldn't that be the best way to investigate such things? Now remember, before I go the other side, let me tell you what MO or military ombudsman is not. It's not there to investigate the tactical approach of the military. Please. It's not there to ask the military, why did you decide to build? I know you know about the super camps that we built in Boronu, because we don't have enough manpower to match ISWAP and Boko Haram. We decided to build super camps. They are not there to ask, okay, why are you taking this, this tactical approach or this strategic approach? No, they are there to investigate those processes and operations that are either affecting the efficiency and the effectiveness of the military, which might be brought by people in charge. If I'm a lieutenant, so that's right, eh? If I'm a lieutenant and I have a colonel who is ahead of me, and I go to him and say, I think this AK-47 that the troops under me are using is not the best approach. I think we need a Superman power. And he says, no, you guys should go and use, shoot and then load. Why these guys are using AK-47? It's easier for me to trigger it, and he goes to the military ombudsman to say, why are they using load and shoot when we can easily procure AK-47? That's what it does. Another thing it does is that because we are trying to improve their efficiency and effectiveness, it's easier for you to use it to know who and who are being paid what they should be paid. Now, let me cite an example. It's nearly criminal to send somebody to a war front and allow him to stay there for 1 year, 2 years without visiting his home. It's criminal. And we are currently doing that. Now tell me, why wouldn't they be war fatigued? Why wouldn't some of them be suffering from post, yes. Why wouldn't some of them be suffering that? If you have an ombudsman, they are able to say, sir, I've been here for 6 months. I need to go home and see my wife. Personally, I would say I need to go home and go and see my wife and see my children. If you are not being posted back, you can trigger it through the process. Now, you are not actually rebelling against the state, but you are actually saying my fundamental human right is being infringed upon by a system that should protect and provide for me. Again, MO is not military tribunal. People say, oh, but we have a military tribunal, so why must we have a military? It's not the same. Military tribunal can go with other criminal things you may have done as a military man. If you, during the course of your operation, you enter into a village and decide to commit rape, that's military tribunal. You go in for that, it's a different thing. But if you, as a military man, in the course of your work, and you think my own right as a person is being infringed upon, then the normal thing is to go through military ombudsman. Now, what of us who are idle civilians? How does that help us? If I'm walking on the street and I'm being slapped by a military man, who obviously has a gun, I can't fight him. Maybe he has so much muscles and six pack. I can't fight him. The best thing is for me to use a military ombudsman to bring him to book without going to court. Probably I don't have the money to pay. So why don't I could use a military ombudsman. They will tell him, okay, for slapping this man, the man has gone to hospital. He has brought a medical bill of 200,000. So every month we are going to be taking 10,000 from your salary until we pay the man back. How good could that be? That's why we need a military ombudsman. Then why again do we need a military ombudsman? I don't know how many of you have parents, relations who are ex-soldiers. Do you know their condition? Most of them go months without pension being paid. You see that's one civil servant. One civil servant is being asked to work the file out. 6 months, this man hasn't been paid. Is that not the best way to go? To go to ombudsman and address all these grievances without escalating into, a big conflict that we can't handle. Then why again do we need a military ombudsman? We need a military ombudsman because of the way our system is. Legislation is something that grows by the day. It's not something you make a law. Even Britain that will say, oh, we don't have a written constitution. But the laws keep, as exigencies arises, you try to make laws to deal with them. So why we need it is because of accountability. We need military ombudsman because of accountability. I talked about the security votes to say, who knows how much we spend on arms? Procurement is never known. With the military ombudsman, probably we can start to narrow down those gray areas that are seemingly corrupt areas, which nobody tried to say it is. But NDBC is going to say it anyway. That's the way it is. These are why we need it. We need it to be able to start narrowing down all these things. Like what South Africa is doing, and which I think we should borrow a leaf from. Not only Nigeria, other countries who, especially in the Sahel, who are fighting one insurgency or the other. Because as people continue to engage in these conflicts or the other, people's rights, there are no two ways about it. People's rights will be infringed upon. Even the common that you're traveling, operation identify yourself, positive identity, and the policeman stops you, and you're able to show him an ID card, and he says, oh, but you now have a white gray. The picture shows a man who doesn't have a white, and he infringes on my right. I can take him to a police ombudsman to say, this policeman with number so saw me and slapped me because he felt the picture I showed him had someone who didn't have a gray. And now I have one. So these are the way these things work. It works in such a way that we try to start being critical. critical to ensure there's a stable country. A stable country does not come because you think that people will not infringe on each other's right. No. As far as there are two people in a room, breathing the same air, walking through the same door and coming in, conflicts are bound to happen. But again, the most important thing that, how do you handle these grievances? How do you handle these grievances so that it does not escalate into a full-time conflict that you're unable to handle? I wouldn't be talking about the options, how do you handle, because the general have already, if Nigeria decides to say this is the way to go, it's not different from what the Public Complaints Commission is doing. It's not different. The investigation, trying to bring both the complainant and the other person together to see it and find out what is the best. It's still the same thing. But why is this one very technical? It's very technical because of the people who are involved in it. You have people who, first, you have people who think you shouldn't tell them. Sorry, sir, but that's the way the military behave. It's based on their training. And now we as the civil society is now trying to tell them no. The democratic principle is that you submit, to the civilian rule. So that's why you have the military, the civil military cooperation. So for us to be able to handle it the way we handle it is to first to say we need a military ombudsman with somebody who is independent of the military, probably an ex-military man or maybe a former judge who is different, who is coming from, who has a different mindset to come and say this is the right approach to solving these problems. Nigerian military, as it grows in bounds, including the police, you find out that these things will continue to, to increase. Administrative oversight will continue to be there. It's certain. You find out that the only way to go about this is to find out that you establish that framework that gives them the ability to either own it, open up, and say things the way they are. For instance, when you look at the German military ombudsman, which everybody wants to mirror after, or the Canadian one, it has been structured in such a way that as little as posting, military posting, if you think that they decided to post me because they don't like my face, you lodge a complaint and go through the process and come out from the other side. It's either you are shown why you've been posted to that place or not. But the most important thing that these things are important and effective because it helps one to understand that in human dealings, there's always a give and take. And that's what the military ombudsman is there to do. So let me summarize my presentation by first concentrating on Nigeria again and go through it. Now, which I mentioned earlier, we have our military in almost all our 36 states doing from Operation Egweke to Operation Dolo, wherever, to Operation Positive Identity, to Operation Crocodile Tears. The military is a command and is a rank and command structure where people do things because they've been asked to do that. If you're in an operation and your commander say shoot, and you think it's not the right thing to do, the question is, are they going to arrange you before a military tribunal? Or are you going to go to a military ombudsman to say, I've been forced to take an irrational action? So you find out that between tactics, operation, and strategy, the ombudsman tries to pick that one that affects the efficiency and the effectiveness of the military and deepen it, removing it from whether the military decides to attack in the night or attack in the day. But once it does not in any way infringe on the rights of the military people or the civilian population, So I think that's the most important thing. So for the Nigerian state, or for other states in Africa, I think if we leave from this conference, one thing we should be asking our members of the houses of assembly or state assemblies is that we all need military ombudsman, just like what South Africa has done. It's just the only way to go. It's just the only way to make sure that there's proper scrutiny, there's accountability, the oversight is working, there's efficiency between efficiency and effectiveness within the military defense architecture, and making sure that as we try to, reform our SSR, which is security sector reform, we are trying to bring in those ingredients that will make our military to work seemingly well, effectively, and deliver the goods we want as a people. Thank you.
Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, my colleagues and everybody here present to witness these brilliant paper presentations. We have listened to Dr. Nwokolo Ndubusi, a perfect Nigerians who have been able to say the truth. His paper centered on even the need to have a military ombudsman. And I think those of us here seated, you will agree with me that his paper has been so much educative and has touched on what the military should do, or our president should do next to establish military ombudsman in Nigeria, just like we have it in South Africa. He has used the German military ombudsman as an example, as a point of contact, and that of Canadian military ombudsman. And I think Nigeria needs military ombudsman. Because in Nigeria here, the way the military is structured is, like he said, it's rank and command structure. If a superior officer says, do this, you don't do it, you are arraigned before military tribunal immediately. Even if that guy is the most efficient officer that has done well in the past, they don't look at it because he disobeyed his superior. For that reason, he's arraigned and will be sentenced. He will be found guilty. If those people in the military, military tribunal doesn't find him guilty, then the man who didn't find him guilty will also enter another trouble because they believe that the wish of the Oga is the final command. And I think ombudsman is the solution to this structure, for the structure to be so efficient and for them to be able to deliver on their mandate. He cited a lot of examples, interesting examples. Look at a situation where people are taken to war for 1-2 years. They have no choice than they can't talk. And that reduces their level of efficiency in the war front. If a soldier has fought brilliantly for 6 good months, it should be withdrawn home and set another set there so that the efficiency will be there. And the man is not even paid his dues. His rights are infringed. He cannot even send money to his children at home. He's in war front in perpetuity. They are killing everybody that are killed that has no relevance, nothing. Nobody even said to their family that your husband has been killed in the war front when they are fighting for the protection of all of us. I think there is need, like he rightly advised and suggested and recommended, the military ombudsman is needed to improve the efficiency and delivery of military on their mandate. And I think this is a take-home for all countries in Sub-Saharan region it is a take-home for all of us in Africa to go and have a military ombudsman, a police ombudsman. These are people that are charged with responsibility of protecting the life of citizens. Soldiers are to protect the territorial integrity of our nation. But policemen on the ordinary street are to protect the rights of individuals who are civilians. But what we have today is a breaker of law and order. An ordinary policeman in the street, as taking himself as a superstar that can do and undo. Yeah, they can. In police checkpoint, you see they drag people, Nigerians out. They start beating them with their number on their chest. Even if you pick the number, when you get to the police station, you see the DPO. Yeah, the DPO will even imprison you there immediately. But if there is a police ombudsman, and a Nigerian that is infringed, will not go to the DPO. Because those soldiers, those police on the street, they are reporting to DPO. I don't say the other one. Whatever the benefit they get on the road, they report to DPO. There is no way a DPO now can find that person guilty. Because we see the level of delivery. You know what I mean by delivery? It's a high level of corruption on the road. So, but if there's military, if there's police ombudsman in the state capital or in the local government where that is, the moment we rush there, this is what happens, sir. Even the passengers in the vehicle will even be a witness that the right of that driver or the passenger has been infringed. And that policeman will be brought to book. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think we need to give the man a more round of applause. Dr. Nwokolo and Ondubusi, a true Nigerian who has been able to speak out ordinary message that even a senior officer in the military cannot even confront his Oga and say, Oga, what we are doing here is wrong. So on that note, I want to appreciate Dr. Nwokolo for that brilliant paper presentation. Before the International Ombudsman is holding in Sheraton Hotel at this hour. On this note, I want to ask a question whether the 6 paper presented already. If we have questions, I will give room for 2 questions per paper. Because I need to be in National Assembly latest by 1:15. So I'm giving you only 10 minutes for us to round up this session. And I believe the session has been so educating, I've been so, informing, and I believe everybody will go back home happy and, implement some of the ideas propagated in this particular expo in their various countries. On that note, I want to ask if there are any questions, any of the people, let's signify. Thank you. Yes, sir. You can come for, okay, give him this something. So if the question relates to your paper, our paper presenters, I think you should note, and then when we take all the questions, we answer 3 or 4 minutes, we conclude. Thank you. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Distinguished Senator, fellow delegates, I want to specifically talk about the act that established the Public Complaint Commission in Nigeria. Part of the areas that we are completely restricted from interfering with are matters within the military. So in Nigerian jurisdiction, it becomes difficult to deal with the military ombudsman. Since it's a constitutional matter and the process of amending that constitution is as difficult as recreating the world. Is there any way the National Assembly, where you are domiciled, and also the chairman of the Public Petition and Ethics Privilege that oversights the Public Complaint Commission, that you can help us pass on this message so that we can delve into that area? Thank you, sir.
Next question, maybe. Can I? Okay, any other question? Maybe I just. Okay, sir. Because that question is thrown to me. Oh, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished Senator, I think the second question is also coming to you.
Okay.
In the sense, the Federal Commissioner for Imo State in Public Complaints Commission, Anambra, my question is almost the same with you. I wanted to stop, but I just missed a little, so that's why I still asked for the microphone.
So what?
I said the question asked by
Okay, it's the same question you want to ask.
Yeah, I said I just want to add a...
To check those who are holding gun. Gun and lie. If you complain, they will shoot you. Because they will, after killing you, nobody to come and give evidence. The military man will say that you are trying to kill him, and they have right of self-defense. Dead. That's it. So this is what Nigerians and many African countries are. They fear. You can't confront somebody who've gone. You say you want to claim your right, self-defense. They will kill you. Many people have been killed like that. Many families have been left without without justice. That is why we are seeking from this particular expo that come. There is need for Nigeria to have military ombudsman, and it is the right. It is our right to make laws. And this is what I take to the leadership of the National Assembly, the Speaker, and the House of and the Senate President. This is the message from this end that come. There is need to have military and police ombudsman in Nigeria. And all of that two people, you carry like a Jamaican, nobody is perfect. You have also got this one from here, take it to Jamaica, let them have military ombudsman and police ombudsman to safeguard the right of people who voted us to represent them in the parliament. The process of amending the constitution is cumbersome. But if it is the wish of Mr. President of Nigeria to have it, it's a matter of sending what? A bill to National Assembly. Communication from Mr. President to have military ombudsman. The Nigerian legislature will embrace it. Oh, we will pass it. If it's the wish of Mr. President. And I believe it will be the wish of Mr. President of Nigeria that military ombudsman, where ordinary military officer can claim his right from number one citizen, the chief of army staff, who is the head of military, that the lower rank, if his right is infringed upon, we have a place to go and complain, and he will not be sacked the second day. But under the present system, if a military officer, even a colonel, say anything wrong to chief of staff, chief of army staff, the second day the man is a gunner. His 13 or 14 years, 15 years in service will be in waste. That is why many of them they fear. They cannot claim right where the big military officers have infringed on their right. And I think this is one of the important messages of this particular seminar, or important gathering, to send messages to our head of states, our presidents, the president of all African countries, that there is need for them to have military and police. Even industrial ombudsmen, those who are in the alcoholic, or who are in the food and beverages, they should have ombudsman to reduce the work of Public Complaint Commission. I take Nigeria as an example. What Complaint Commission should make for is for people who voted us to power. We are state governor or chairman of council deliberately usurp the power and take away their land that originally meant for them. example, what the Kano commissioner gave us as an example here. There are traditional owners of land, though Decree 78 vested everything to the state governor. But are these powers reasonably exercised? If the answer is no, then if there is a public complaint commission, if people know the importance, they will run down to them. You can't sue state governor or state government into the court created by a state governor, where he is the one who appointed the chief judge. On case of land, you will lose. Even if you are the owner, they will manipulate record to make sure that you are not the owner. And therefore, the rights of citizens are being infringed. And when they believe that they have no other place to go, they take right to their door and be bombing fuel station, bombing everywhere. You won't see them. After all, okay, if you say you want to establish a state government petrol station in this my father's land, that state government petrol will never function. When you finish it in the night, they will go and bomb it. Everything lost. So we need industrial ombudsman as distinct from what? The normal public ombudsman. So on this note, I want to thank everybody. Are there any other questions? Okay. Question. I think I've answered your question, sir. Yes, sir. Yes. Okay, please, sir.
Thank you very much. I'm Dr. Ngaya, Senator from Cameroon. I would like to remind you that I'm here with my boss, the Vice President of the Senate of Cameroon, Chief Barrister Tabetando. And as I said yesterday and 2 days ago, we are not a member of Ombuds institution in our country. We are senators. And the president of the Cameroon Senate sent us here only to learn, to see how Ombuds institution works throughout Africa and throughout the world. And we understand that we be provided with all the presentation in digital support before going back. I would like to make one remark, especially to our sister from Jamaica, who make a very brilliant presentation on how Ombuds institution interfere with electoral and political processes. We know that in many of our countries, political parties and civil society organizations are involved in special agreements, declaration on political conduct, mainly during electoral processes. Political parties and civil society organizations sign this declaration, this agreement before the election, and engage themselves to respect this agreement during and after the elections. But we know that very often these agreements are not really respected by those who sign.